This is a 180, 225, excuse me, 182 voice. Please state your name, Mary Page. Where are you employed? I work at the Kentucky Fried Chicken restaurant. Is that on Greenwood Avenue? Yes, it is. Were you working there on February 3, only in the afternoon? What type of work were you doing? I was doing everything, but mainly I was preparing the food for the evening rush. Did you work at the counter? Yes, everywhere. Did you take food out to customers? Sometimes I did. On the afternoon of February 3, did you observe anything that caused you concern? Yes, I did. I saw a woman shaking a baby, and it really upset me. Where in the restaurant were you? I was taking an order out to customers. Do you mean you were carrying food out to customers? That's correct. To whom were you carrying the food? To the defendant and to the other people at her table. How was the defendant involved in this? She was the woman who was shaking the baby. When you saw her shaking the baby, approximately how far away from her were you? About 5 feet. Describe what you saw. The baby must have been fussing or something. The defendant got up and walked around the table to where the baby was sitting. I could hear the defendant saying, I can't take this anymore. Then she picked up the baby and shook it hard for approximately 15 seconds. Was the baby in a high chair when she lifted it? In a high chair. What did you do when you observed this? I pretended like I didn't see anything. I walked up to the counter and kept a very close eye on the table. Did you observe anything else at that table that caused you concern? Well, after she shook the baby, it kind of just sat there limp, you know. It didn't really make any noise or anything. After the baby had been shaken, did it appear to be different? It sat there. Before the defendant started shaking the baby, was it making any noise? It was making baby noises. It was gurgling and that sort of thing. Do you remember about how long the baby remained quiet after it was shaken? After the defendant shook the baby, she put it in her lap. It remained quiet for about 10 or 15 minutes. Did you observe the defendant do anything else with the baby that caused you concern? She slapped it. Tell us about that. The defendant moved the high chair to the opposite side of the table from where it had been before. Then she slapped the baby and put it in the high chair again. Do you remember where she slapped the baby on its face? How would you describe the slap? Was it soft or hard? It was very hard. I was very angry. What did you do after you observed this activity? I went to the packing area of the restaurant and I consulted with a few of my fellow employees. Then I went back up front and pretended to be doing something, but I was really watching the table. How old did you think the baby was? Approximately 10 months old, but I found out later that it was older. I went to back up for a minute. You were already working when the defendant came into the restaurant. Is that right? Yes, I was. After she arrived, how long was it before you served the food? Approximately 5 minutes. Did the defendant leave the table at any time while you were observing her? No, she didn't. Did she get up to get soda? The customers get their soda before they sit down. You indicated that the baby was making normal baby noises just before the defendant began shaking it. Is that right? That's right. It was gurgling. The baby wasn't causing a problem, was it? Not that I could see. You said that other people were at the table. There were two other people there, a man and a woman. Where was this couple seated? Well, it was two tables put into one. They were all sitting around the same table. Were they sitting across from each other? Yes, they were. Where was the baby situated? In the beginning, the baby was next to the other two people. In the beginning, that's how they were sitting when I delivered the food. So the defendant was sitting on one side of the table. The couple was sitting on the other side of the table. The baby was in a high chair next to the couple, correct? That's correct. You indicated that when you walked up to serve the food, The defendant grabbed the baby. She lifted it out of the chair. The baby was happy. It was gurgling. While I didn't see it crying or anything. You just testified that the baby was making normal gurgling noises. That's right. You serve the food. The defendant gets up, walks over, and jerks the baby out of the chair. That's what happened. Are you certain that the baby was out of the chair? She lifted the baby out of the chair and started shaking it hard. Was she moving the baby back and forth at a full arms extension? Not full extensions, no. About how many times did she shake the baby? About 10 times. The couple who were sitting at the table, what were they doing? They were just looking down and eating their food. After the defendant shook the baby, what did she do? The defendant went back to where she was sitting originally. The defendant took the baby with her, is that correct? Yes, and she put it on her lap. Are you absolutely positive that the baby wasn't in the chair when the defendant slapped it? I believe it was on the defendant's lap, and then she put it in the high chair after she slapped it. You remained in the dining area of the restaurant the whole time to observe the table. Is that correct? Yes, except for the time that I went back and discussed the matter with my fellow employees. Where were you when you saw the baby being slapped? Behind the counter. You testify that the baby went limp for approximately 5 minutes. It didn't do anything. It stared off into space. Let me see if I understand your testimony. Did the defendant put the baby back into the chair after she shook it? I don't believe so. I believe that is when she put it on her lap. I have a difficult time understanding when you say, I don't believe so. Do you have a recollection of whether she put the baby back into the high chair?